Hello everyone, and welcome to the M.O.W channel. In today's video, we'll be covering the shocking story of Scott Kimball, a serial killer who became an FBI informant. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons. They are a huge encouragement for our video production. Every one of your clicks is a massive support for us. Now, let's dive straight into the truth behind Kimball's double life and his crimes. The man, who, on the surface, was a loyal FBI informant, but secretly committed a string of serial murders behind the scenes. Chapter 1: The seemingly model informant. In 2002, the FBI recruited a new informant. His name was Scott Kimball. Officially, he was a loyal informant, trusted by both the police and the FBI. However, hidden behind his exterior was a dark shadow that no one could have predicted. Scott Kimball was born on September 21, 1966, in Boulder, Colorado, USA. Records of his early life are somewhat limited, but he caused trouble multiple times while growing up, leading to an early entanglement with the law. Kimball's family background was a typical middle-class home, yet his personal tendencies and poor judgment led him to become involved in petty crimes. Throughout his adolescence, he committed crimes like fraud, theft, and forgery, gradually becoming accustomed to a life of crime. Those around him noted his talent and outgoing personality, but also worried about his unstable judgment and impulsive behavior. As an adult, Kimball began accumulating a serious criminal record. He faced legal trouble numerous times for fraud, forgery, and weapons possession, often serving time in prison. His crimes weren't simple, impulsive acts. They had a meticulously calculated aspect, which laid the foundation for him to plan and execute even larger crimes in the future. At the time, those around him knew he caused problems, but they never imagined the extent of how serious things would become. In 2002, Kimball was in custody for fraud charges. It was then that he contacted investigators, claiming he could be a useful informant for the FBI. While this claim wasn't entirely truthful, the FBI accepted his offer, and Kimball began operating as a cooperating witness. The role of an informant offered him a new opportunity, but also allowed his dangerous potential to fully explode. He could use his official status to manipulate crimes and information, and the police and FBI never doubted the reality of his claims. During the early phase of Kimball's informant activities, everything appeared normal on the surface. He established a cooperative relationship with the FBI, provided information related to ongoing cases, and earned the trust of the agency. However, this process also gave him the chance to use information to conceal his own crimes, manipulate the location of victims, and confuse investigations. His actions appeared lawful and loyal on the surface, but internally, a meticulously planned criminal strategy was hidden. Kimball's early life as an informant perfectly illustrates the case of a two-faced individual. Externally, he was a model, cooperative, and trusted informant, but within him, carefully calculated criminal acts were taking root. By juggling the dual roles of committing crimes and providing information, he paved the way toward increasingly dangerous offenses. His actions, backed by the trust of the FBI, became the starting point for incidents that would soon shock American society. Scott Kimball's story is not just a simple criminal record. It's an example that reveals the human psychology of exploiting gaps in authority and trust, and the complex relationship between organizations and individuals. His early life and transition to an informant are closely linked to the subsequent serial murders, providing documentary viewers with crucial background to understand his double life. What plans and intentions were truly hidden within the man, who appeared to be a merely loyal informant? In this chapter, we slowly begin to examine exactly that. Chapter 2: Crimes Committed in Secrecy. As Scott Kimball began working as an FBI informant, two contrasting realities coexisted in his life. On the surface, he was a loyal informant, cooperating with investigations and earning the FBI's trust. Simultaneously, however, he used his position to secretly plan and execute crimes. Kimball believed that law enforcement wasn't closely monitoring his activities, which emboldened him to continue his criminal acts while taking risks. Kimball's crimes weren't just impulsive acts of violence. He carefully selected his victims, earning the nickname of an opportunistic killer. As he waited for the chance to murder, some of his victims were individuals he had a personal relationship with. For example, when he murdered his former girlfriend, Leanne Emery, his actions combined personal resentment with a desire to test his own power. His niece, Casey McLeod, and his uncle, Terry Kimball, were also included in his list of victims, demonstrating that his crimes were premeditated, not just random occurrences. Kimball used astonishing methods to conceal the victims' remains or mislead investigators about their locations. He cunningly utilized the intelligence provided by the FBI and manipulated investigation routes, showing no hesitation in committing other crimes, even while police were actively tracking his victims. This behavior made his crimes difficult to detect, and, at the same time, allowed him to cloak his actions using the trust he built within the FBI. The combination of an informant's privileges and a civilian's brutality was highly unusual. Kimball was also adept at minimizing the evidence of his crimes. After a murder, he would tamper with the scene or hide the body, confusing investigators while covering his tracks. Most of the victims were people close to him, which allowed Kimball to secretly combine the motive and execution of the crimes on a personal level. His methods were often meticulously calculated, a key reason why he was able to continuously deceive the police and the FBI. Between 2003 and 2004, Kimball's crimes became more frequent and their scope broadened. He went beyond crimes merely for personal gratification, exhibiting a need to test his own power and control. According to internal FBI records, Kimball used the knowledge and contacts he had gathered as an informant to isolate victims and minimize evidence after the crime. This approach allowed him to conceal his criminal activities while maintaining his role as an informant, a fact the FBI failed to suspect. Kimball's murders were simultaneously premeditated and opportunistic. He leveraged chance circumstances for his crimes, sometimes appearing to select victims without a specific objective or plan. However, a closer look at his crime pattern reveals that the process of selection and execution was highly organized and meticulous. This suggested that he was not merely an impulsive offender, but someone who could strategically design his crimes. Kimball's string of serial murders caused a massive public shock, but due to his identity and role, they remained undetected within the FBI for a long time. He was at the center of the very cases the police and FBI were focused on. Yet he inflicted extreme terror on the victims' families and society at large. Kimball's crimes were not simple murders. They were clever criminal strategies that leveraged power and trust, making his actions more lethal and long-lasting in their impact. In this chapter, we detail how Kimball exploited his privileges as an FBI informant, the process by which he secretly planned and executed his crimes, and the impact on the victims and society. His case demonstrates the simultaneous existence of two conflicting realities: the appearance of a trustworthy informant and the secret serial murders he committed behind that facade. This allows viewers to understand that Kimball's actions were not impulsive killings, but meticulously calculated crimes. Chapter 3: The FBI Deception. While Scott Kimball's crimes were proceeding in secrecy, he emerged as more than just a murderer. Kimball fully exploited his status as an FBI informant, perpetrating subtle deceptions that amounted to mocking the police and investigative agencies. On the surface, he appeared to be a cooperative and reliable source, but in reality, he showed an astonishing ability to disrupt the investigation and conceal evidence of his crimes. Kimball's strategy was meticulously calculated. He deliberately hid the victims' locations and bodies or provided false information, confusing the investigation. FBI agents trusted his information as accurate, but Kimball was, in fact, wasting their time while simultaneously covering up his own crimes. This behavior was more than mere criminal concealment. It was a psychological game, played against the entire organization. He could manipulate the direction of the investigation to suit his needs, giving him the leeway to plan and commit more crimes. Kimball's deception was also evident in his personal relationships with the victims. He selectively targeted close relatives and former girlfriends, all while leading the FBI to pursue those very cases. For instance, in the cases of his niece, Casey McLeod, and his former girlfriend, Leanne Emery, he deliberately fabricated clues or delayed the investigation. Throughout this process, the FBI never doubted Kimball's loyalty or cooperative attitude. In fact, they trusted him even more. Kimball's modus operandi was unique because, unlike typical serial killers, he actively used his informant status. He went beyond simply committing murder, employing a complex strategy to manipulate the investigative body and conceal himself. According to internal FBI documents and testimonies, Kimball would deliberately provide false information after a crime to divert the investigation down other leads, creating confusion between the actual crime scenes and the discovery locations of the victims. These actions were crucial in keeping the FBI believing in him as a reliable source. Furthermore, Kimball understood the psychological limits and procedural weaknesses of the investigators. He observed how the FBI relied on specific clues or evidence and tailored his actions accordingly. This calculated strategy made him not just a criminal, but a master criminal strategist, and ensured his crimes remained undiscovered for a long time. Kimball constantly sought ways to minimize the risk of being caught, while sustaining his criminal activities. Kimball's deception eventually sparked controversy even within the FBI. Some investigators noted that his information was often inconsistent or strange, but his status as an informant made them reluctant to question him deeply. This exposed a vulnerability in the informant system, leading to a review of the management and vetting procedures for informants within the FBI. After the Kimball case, Kimball cleverly exploited the organization's trust and authority by simultaneously maintaining his criminal life and his role as an informant. This situation revealed that he was not merely a murderer, but a master of the double life, capable of fooling the FBI and concealing his crimes. Kimball actively leveraged the fact that he was the person providing information, swaying the judgment and procedures of the investigators. His actions vividly demonstrated how the relationship between crime, power, and trust can become intricately entwined, delivering both shock and tension to documentary viewers. Kimball's challenge was not just about hiding the fact that he was a criminal. It was a deception waged against a national institution, the FBI itself. He cunningly exploited the internal structure of trust to conceal his crimes and create opportunities for further offenses. This chapter deeply illuminates Kimball's shrewdness, his criminal strategy using his informant status, and the inherent vulnerabilities within the FBI. Through this, viewers understand that his crimes were not just serial murders, but intelligent crimes committed against an organization and its system. Chapter 4: The truth of the crimes is revealed. As Scott Kimball's secret crimes and his deception of the FBI continued for years, the suspicions and small clues surrounding him gradually began to surface. The fact that Kimball, who had appeared to be a loyal informant, was actually committing serial murders, eventually delivered an enormous shock to law enforcement and society at large. The process of the truth being revealed is the moment that builds maximum tension in the documentary. The crucial turning point in the Kimball case occurred between 2009 and 2010. The FBI and local police began re-examining clues related to missing persons from previous years, starting to focus on the possibility of Kimball's involvement. In particular, when the disappearances and deaths of his relatives and former girlfriend were connected, investigators realized they weren't dealing with simple individual crimes but a serial pattern. During the investigation, it was confirmed that some of the information Kimball had provided was deliberately fabricated, which came as a huge shock to the agents. Kimball's confession became the decisive factor in uncovering the full truth of the case. He admitted to killing at least 21 people and provided detailed descriptions of the locations of the bodies, his methods of murder, and his motives. According to internal FBI records and prosecutorial investigation materials, Kimball stated that he had leveraged his informant status to manipulate the police and FBI, allowing him to plan and conceal his crimes. His confession was more than a mere admission. It became evidence that clearly demonstrated the organized and premeditated nature of his crimes. The public reaction was immediate and staggering. Media outlets across the United States covered the Kimball case as a major news story, pointing out problems with the trust, structure and management system within intelligence agencies. For ordinary citizens, the fact that a serial killer was an informant trusted by a national agency brought widespread fear and confusion. Experts assess the Kimball case as a classic example of the abuse of informant trust, emphasizing the need to strengthen informant management systems going forward. The legal proceedings were also complex. Kimball was indicted in multiple states based on his confession and evidence, and the prosecution focused on collecting evidence and securing witnesses to prove that his crimes were not merely homicides, but premeditated and repetitive serial murders. Investigators cross-referenced the information Kimball provided with actual case records, confirming that his crimes were not just impulsive acts born of personal rage. Throughout this process, the victims' families finally faced the truth. After years of confusion and agony, the exposure of Kimball's crimes sparked significant controversy within the FBI as well. It revealed the vulnerabilities in the informant management system and the limitations of the investigative process, making it clear that organizational reflection and preventative measures were necessary. Following the incident, the FBI strengthened its system for vetting and monitoring informants and revamped internal regulations. The Kimball case went beyond being a simple crime. It raised fundamental questions about intelligence agencies and the national trust system. The shock delivered to viewers transcends the mere scale of the crimes. Kimball used the privileges and trust of an informant to conceal his crimes, manipulating the judgment of investigators and sustaining his criminal activities over a long period. This reality starkly illustrates just how vast the difference between the surface and the truth can be, and how power and trust can be exploited by the wrong person. The revelation of the Kimball case served as a catalyst for both intelligence agencies and civil society to reconfirm the importance of trust and vetting. Ultimately, Kimball's confession and the legal evidence proved that his crimes were not just personal acts, but intelligent offenses against an organization and its institutions. This chapter provides a dramatic twist for documentary viewers, allowing for an in-depth understanding of the full scope of the Kimball case and its societal repercussions. As the truth of the crimes is revealed, the audience witnesses the complexity of human psychology and social structure amid shock and horror. Chapter 5: The 70-Year Sentence. After all of Scott Kimball's crimes were exposed, and the public shock and controversy reached their peak, the U.S. court issued its final ruling on his offenses. Kimball was charged with multiple counts, including serial murder, fraud, criminal concealment, and abuse of informant status. During the trial, it was officially confirmed that he had killed at least 21 people. The court clearly recognized that his crimes were not merely impulsive or accidental acts, but premeditated and organized serial murders. The court's judgment was resolute. Kimball was sentenced to 70 years in prison and is currently serving his term. His sentence goes beyond simple punishment. It carries a cautionary message to intelligence agencies and society. While cases of an FBI informant abusing their privilege to commit crimes were rare before, the Kimball case was recorded as unprecedented in the severity and meticulousness of the offenses. Investigators, legal professionals, and experts all acknowledged that his crimes were organized and sophisticated, stressing the need for institutional reforms to prevent recurrence. The Kimball case transcends a simple criminal case, offering a moment for social lesson and reflection. It vividly demonstrated how much damage a single individual's malicious actions can inflict within a structure where intelligence agencies operate based on trust. The FBI responded by strengthening informant vetting and management procedures, implementing measures to minimize potential risks, by separating a criminal's status from their authority. The Kimball case reminded not only national agencies, but also the general public of the dangers that can arise from the abuse of power and trust. For the victims' families, deep wounds and pain remain. Even after Kimball's crimes were revealed, their suffering was not easily healed. The documentary emphasizes the human aspect of the case, by highlighting the voices and experiences of these families. It's important to show the real-world harm and societal ripple effects, not just a criminal record. The Kimball case is regarded as an example that encompasses not only the cruelty of the offender, but also the psychological and emotional harm experienced by the victims. Beyond the legal and social measures, the Kimball case garnered significant media and public attention. The press focused heavily on his crimes and the internal mismanagement within the FBI, publicly analyzing the vulnerability of intelligence agencies and public trust systems. Following the exposure, relevant agencies strengthened internal oversight and informant management. Regulations, and civil society actively engaged in discussions on the discrepancy between perceived trustworthiness and actual behavior. For documentary viewers, the conclusion of the Kimball case is more than just the end of a crime story. His incarceration and sentence symbolize the delivery of justice and a message of social vigilance. Through his extreme duplicity, the loyal informant versus the actual serial killer, we are once again reminded of the complexity of human psychology and the danger of abusing power. It remains an important learning example for understanding crime, trust, and institutional vulnerability. Ultimately, Scott Kimball faced justice, but the scars and lessons left by his crimes will be remembered for a long time. The importance of trust and responsibility in intelligence agencies, the need for a social safety net, and the value of individual conscience and ethical judgment are clearly highlighted by the Kimball case. Concluding the documentary, viewers are given the opportunity to reflect on the difference between appearance and reality, and how power and trust can be abused. The Kimball case stands as a historical record, illustrating the relationship between crime, power, and trust, providing social and institutional lessons far beyond a simple serial murder case. How did you feel about the shocking story of Scott Kimball, the FBI informant, that we covered in today's video? His double life and the truth of his crimes force us to think deeply about trust, power, and human psychology. To help us keep creating stories like this, please make sure to subscribe and like. Every click from you is a huge encouragement for us. We plan to cover more shocking and meaningful cases in our next video, so please watch until the end and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Until the day we face the truth together, this is where we'll end today's video. Thank you.